Yum. Good morning, everybody. Let me know if you're here. Say hi. If you like anything, click like. Then I have feedback to work off of. But that said, we are in Acts chapter 7 this morning, and we're going to cruise right along here, and we'll just see how far we get. So in verse 9, Stephen is preaching this amazing sermon, and he's going to move quickly through some of the highlights of the Old Testament. So it's a great review chapter for people who want to go back and just kind of, remember the highlights and the high points. And so, hey, good morning to everybody who's starting to chime in there. So, verse 9. No, did we get that far? We didn't get that far. I think we got to verse 5. I forget where we got now. Well, let's see here. No, we got to let's see here, 5. So God gave him no inheritance, not even enough to set his foot on. But when Abraham had no child, he promised to give it to him for possession and to his descendants after him. But God spoke in this way, that his descendants would dwell in a foreign land, and they would bring them into bondage and oppress them 400 years. And the nation to whom they will be in bondage I will judge, says God. And after that they shall come out and serve me in this place. Then he gave him the covenant of circumcision. And so Abraham begot Isaac and circumcised him on the 8th day. Isaac begot Jacob, and Jacob begot the 12 patriarchs. And so that's just wrapping up the beginning with Abraham. And it's interesting, the 400 years. I don't want to get too sidetracked on history, facts, and stuff, but if you go back to where we entered into Exodus, I think I spent some time on this with our church. So the 400 years didn't start when Abraham moved down there with Joseph. It started back when when Jacob moved down there with Joseph. It started when Abraham was there. And the idea was he went down into Egypt, and during that time, Egypt actually was regularly raiding up into Canaan, and we have Abraham's gate at Tel Dan at the very north side of Israel. Dan is the most northern city. You hear that saying in the Bible, from Dan to Beersheba, or Dan to the Great Sea. It's from the north to the south. Egypt had built stuff all the way up in Dan. And you see in Beshan, there is where King Saul's body was hung, right? There's a few other stories that take place in that city. But at the top of the hill there is an Egyptian outpost. And so much of Canaan had Egyptian control over time. And so the Egyptians had a strong influence and an oppressive influence on Abraham. Where am I going with all this? Well, the 400 years, I believe, started earlier. And so when Jacob, Israel, ended up moving down to Egypt for that period where they became enslaved in Egypt, I think that was only about 265 years. But this whole time period where Abraham was going to be living in a foreign land under the oppression of foreigners, as opposed to coming in to conquer and take the land. Because after 400 years later, that is when they leave Egypt and they are on a direct path, 40-year wandering direct path, to go in and conquer the land. And so, but he did it with the promise that neither Abraham, Isaac, nor Jacob got to see that promise fulfilled. Neither does Joseph. Neither does the next ones. And so they had faith, though. They believed that God could accomplish what he said he was going to accomplish. And so in verse 9, it says, the patriarchs, becoming envious, sold Joseph into Egypt, but God was with him and delivered him out of all of his troubles, and gave him favor and wisdom in the presence of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and made him governor over Egypt and all his house. Now a famine of great trouble came over all the land of Egypt and Canaan, and our fathers found no sustenance. But when Jacob heard that there was grain in Egypt, he sent our fathers first. And the second time, and here's an emphasis, Joseph was made known to his brothers, and Joseph's family became known to Pharaoh. Then Joseph sent and called his father Jacob and all his relatives to him, 75 people. So Jacob went down to Egypt, and he died, and he and our fathers. And they were carried back to Shechem and laid in the tomb that Abraham had bought for a sum of money from the sons of Hamor, the fathers of Shechem. So a couple important things, and this is probably as far as we'll get today as far as like text. There's a lot. We already covered a lot of verses for us. And so firstly, we see Joseph's brothers selling him into slavery. Now, you're going to see Joseph make the comment in Genesis 50, right? That what you intended for evil, God intended for good. And there's a good reminder of that we all are going to face random stuff in this life. We got another lockdown getting started. We've got election stuff going on. I mean, we have all these crazy things going on. And yet, if we hold fast and remain faithful, what others may have intended for evil, what Satan may have intended for evil, God can work it to the good. Because he promises in his word in Romans 8 that he'll work all things to the good for those who love him and are called according to his purposes. So it'll always work out to the good. And so Joseph is an amazing person to just look at his character. He's sold into slavery, yet he remains faithful. His master's wife tries to set him up and accuses him of rape, and yet he holds fast and remains faithful. He goes to prison, he remains faithful. He has these prisoners that he helps, one guy at least, get set free, and the guy promised to help him, but he forgets about him. Yet Joseph remains faithful. And Joseph goes from there to being head over all of Egypt, second only to Pharaoh, because Joseph remained faithful. Now you'll notice this is a little thing that's kind of hidden in there, but you'll notice it says in verse 13, and the second time Joseph was made known to his brothers. You're going to notice here a little bit of a trend in Stephen's preaching. He's going to say the same thing with Moses. You see, Moses tried to save his people. We'll get to that in the future, maybe tomorrow or the next day. But Moses wanted to free his people. Remember, he kills the Egyptian, and then the people don't receive him, do they? Like, oh, are you going to kill us too? And so he flees into Midian. And it's not till the second time that Moses returns that he'll be received by his people. Joseph has his brothers come in. They don't know who he is. They don't recognize him. But the second time that they see him, he is revealed. What is Stephen trying to do? Stephen's trying to hint at Christ. That the first coming, the Jews would not receive him. They would not recognize him. They would not receive Jesus as their Lord. But at the second coming, they will. And so that is some of the foreshadowing. Stephen's taking the history that they're all very familiar with, and now he's inserting this teaching point. At the first coming, Moses wasn't recognized, but at the second coming, he delivered his people. At the first coming, the Jews, the brothers, it's how more Jewish can you get than the patriarchs, right? 11 of the patriarchs. They didn't recognize Joseph as their brother, their own brother. But the second time it was revealed, their eyes were opened. And so we know that the end, it's coming. And in that end times period, the book of Revelation teaches plainly, and the rest of the Bible affirms that God is going to reach out to his people one more time. And the Jews are going to turn to Jesus Christ, and it's going to hit them like a ton of bricks. In fact, the specific event in prophecy is where the abomination of desolation, where the Antichrist is going to walk into the temple and demand to be worshipped as God. Daniel chapter 9, 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, places you should flip to if you want to know those stories. And he's going to go into the new temple that will be built in Jerusalem, that they already have the pieces to build it. It's there and waiting. In fact, I got a picture of the menorah, the big golden lampstand there sitting in the Jewish quarter. Solid gold, really cool. Anyway, so he's going to go and he's going to demand to be worshipped as God. In fact, I think if you read in Revelation chapter 11 with the two witnesses at the 3.5 mark, they're going to be killed. It's my personal belief, and it's okay, other people can believe different things. But I think the Antichrist is going to kill the two witnesses, because it talks about that happening in Revelation. And I think he's going to kill them because they're supposed to be in Jerusalem. And then he's going to walk right up into that temple. He put an end to these two pestering guys who had been plaguing the world with their miracles and their preaching and talking about one way and all this garbage. And so he offs them both. He's the only person who was able to kill them. No one else was able to kill them. And he's going to march his way into that temple. He's going to demand that he be worshipped as God. He's the savior of the world. He killed the two witnesses that have been creating all these problems. And at that point, much of the world, I think, will follow him. I think much of the world is going to be thankful. There's an illusion, just an illusion, that some of those crazy, catastrophic events that take place in the opening of the seals, that the witnesses could be the instigators. Because some of the things that they are supposed to do line up with the prophecy. So they're preaching the first 3.5 years, hey, this stuff's coming, and boom, it comes. So people are going to be pinning all this catastrophe on these guys. The world's going to hate them. So if the Antichrist kills them, he's doing them a favor. And I'm getting a little off track, but no, it's wrapping around, because the second coming, the Jews are going to have their eyes opened. In Zechariah chapter 12, in verse 10, it says, "And I will pour on the house of David and on the inhabitants of Jerusalem the spirit of grace and supplication. Then they will look on me whom they pierced. Yes, they will mourn for him as one mourns for his only son, and grieve for him who grieves for a firstborn." This is an interesting verse to read to a Jewish person, because they will look on me. Who's speaking? God. I will pour out my spirit of grace. I mean, only one person can say that, right? So you got to ask the Jews, when did you pierce God? They will look on me whom they pierced. Something's going to happen. The Antichrist is going to march in. He's going to declare he's God and needs to be worshipped. And all the Jews are going to go. And they're going to mourn for him as one mourns for his only son and grieves for his firstborn. And it's the idea is that it's going to hit them like a huge, gigantic ton of bricks. And they're going to break down weeping, and they're going to realize in that moment, Jesus was our Messiah. And so his first coming, they rejected him, just like Joseph's brothers. But at the second coming, they will receive him. And you're going to see a massive revival, really, amongst the Jewish people. You're going to see the 144,000 saved and whatnot, and it's going to be crazy and cool. So somehow our Acts study turned into a Revelation study, and that's okay. But just know, yeah, it's at the second coming that the Jewish people are going to have that massive revival take place. So there you go for today. We made it all the way down to where? We made it all the way down to verse 16. That's like huge. So I will see you guys tomorrow, and we'll go into that text on Moses tomorrow. Have a great day, everybody.